We are at the forefront of many innovative and exciting things developing in the world of senior living. With Tim Mallett, CEO of Forefront Living, as our guide, this show will shine a light on how older adults can embrace these changes to live active, happy, fulfilling, and thriving lives. Through discussions with senior living and hospice professionals, architects and designers, and people of all ages, will help today's seniors envision the art of the possible and take steps toward achieving the future of their dreams. Welcome to At the Forefront.
And I'm Tim Mallett, CEO of Forefront Living. We have a great segment today. We have a guest. His name is Steve Schneiderman. Steve was born in the Bronx in New York and lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He is now a resident of Dallas, Texas. Steve has a very interesting background in tech. He spent 40 years leading digital transformation of companies of all sizes across all verticals, and has had a lifelong ambition to work in big tech, an ambition and an objective that he's met by working with Microsoft. So Steve, welcome to At the Forefront.
Thank you very much. Appreciate being here.
Well, Steve, in my introduction, you're actually Steve the Sleeve Schneiderman. And while I think tech and all those cool things related to technology is a phenomenal subject, we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about another passion of yours. And what is that passion?
Magic.
Magic. And I love magic. I think magic is something that transcends and has so many different definitions. And in the next 14 or 15 minutes, we're going to talk a bit about that. But as we were preparing for this episode, we talked a little bit about your inspiration for magic. Can you talk to me about that?
Sure, by all means. It's a kind of an unusual backstory because I come from 3 generations of magicians. I'm being number 3. Back in the 1940s, my Uncle Harry had kind of like a fun and gift shop, magic shop of sorts in New York City. And my dad kind of worked his way through high school as the provider of his family in my Uncle Harry's shop, making tricks in the back and teaching tricks to customers and stuff. And when I was about 5 years old, one day I had this memory of being over my Uncle Harry's house, and he said, "Stevie, come over here." And I sat down on his knee, and he reached behind my ear and pulled a quarter out. And my jaw was like, I had absolutely no clue where it came from. And then he proceeded to make it disappear in his hands. And then he pulled it out of my other ear and then out of my elbow. And at that moment, I thought it was the most incredible thing I had ever seen. And I wanted to know how it worked. And I wanted to be able to do it to my friends and my mom and dad. And he was giggling about my reaction to it. But the fact was I was probably a little too young to really understand everything that was going on mechanically, because magic is more than just pulling a coin out of an ear. There's misdirection, there's timing, there's a lot of art to it. And so I was patient. He kept showing me tricks from time to time during our visits. He showed me some of the classic things like the cups and balls and making the balls jump from under cup to cup and then vanish again. And I was bitten by the bug at that point, and so it was just a question of me getting a little older and continuing to harangue him to teach me what he was actually showing me.
Well, yeah, that's a question I have, because I'm inquisitive like you, and I've seen a lot of magic tricks, and I've always wanted to know the mechanics behind them, but the magician is reluctant to tell you the mechanics. So how much coaxing did it take with Uncle Harry to get him to tell you?
It took a lot. I mean, I would bet it probably, took about 2 years, and probably me getting to an age where I could actually have a conversation about what he was showing me, and I'd be able to ask intelligent questions and listen to his response, and, be patient enough to sit there and watch him show me how to move your hands, when to point, how to use misdirection and timing. And, I caught on really fast. And so, my family continued to buy me magic kits from all the major department stores in New York, and that was how I started to build my repertoire, if you will. But it wasn't until much later, when I turned 13, that I was able to convince my family to take me to an actual professional magician supply shop. And that's where I actually saw, famous magicians doing things that I'd seen on TV, that it was like, okay, 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 it's overwhelming. I want it all. How much does it cost? And I thought the measly $15 I had brought with me for my birthday present was going to cover an entire creation of a stage act. But the reality was, I think I bought three very simple pocket tricks that I could practice and carry with me and show my friends in school, and that was really the start of getting into the hobby, in terms of buying professional equipment and really trying to learn. But as I soon came to understand, it's not the trick, it's the understanding and the science behind it, the methodology, if you will. And then further beyond that, it's learning how to develop your own personality, so that it really doesn't make a difference what the trick is. At the end of the day, you want the audience to remember you, and how you transform their heart when you showed magic to them.
So what was
And
the first trick that you learned?
it's funny. I would say it was probably a card trick. My dad, would seclude me down the basement with him on rainy days, and he would show me a bunch of different card tricks, of nothing that required skill. It was more a question of just remembering certain steps in order to find the selected card at the end. There's a million of them, and so he showed me a ton of card tricks, and that's what kind of eventually pointed me in the direction of learning sleight of hand, because I figured, anybody could go to a magic store, and buy a trick and follow the instructions. But that wouldn't make for a unique performance. It would be 100 other kids doing the same thing. And the same with books. I mean, you can go to the library and you can read all of these card tricks and learn how to do them, and again, do them step by step. But ultimately, what you want is, you want the audience to remember the experience of you as a performer, and how you impacted them.
Do you
And for me, it's
remember the first time that you practiced magic in front of an audience?
I can tell you, in fourth grade, I was Houdini Jr. in a little vaudeville performance, and I did the absolutely worst magic show of my entire life.
Tell us about it.
My Well, my dad had taken the cardboard from his shirts from the laundry, and with a magic marker made big jumbo playing cards so that it could be seen from stage. And I incorporated some of the plastic tricks that had come in the various kits that I had gotten as gifts over the years. And, it just doesn't show up on stage very well when there's 600 people in the audience. And of course, you know, I was just winging it. I'm wearing a black cape. I'm wearing a fake mustache, a fez hat. It was very put together at the last minute type of an act. And I will tell you, this really has nothing to do with the magic part. But at the end of the act, the curtain started closing, and I walked out. And this was not rehearsed. My teacher was in the front row with the principal, and they were like, "What's he doing?" And I said, "Before the curtains close on me, I'd like to tell a joke." And I then proceeded to tell a joke by one of the old 60s comics about a bigamist.
And you were how old?
I was 11.
So you educated everybody else that day.
Everybody was running to the bathroom, or they were going to pee in their pants. That made me the big hit of the show. I mean, the principal came over at the end and said that was the best thing he'd ever seen. So it was quite a memorable experience. I thought I was actually telling a joke by Red Skelton, because he was my favorite comic when I was a kid, and I had an autographed photo of him in my room. And I thought that that's what I was doing, but it was another comic, and of course I didn't know what bigamy was, but it was a hell of a show.
And you were hooked.
I was hooked, because there's something about the recognition, getting a standing ovation, that gosh, you can't match it, and over the years I've been so blessed in both my private performances and here on at the Spotlight Theater in Tulsa. I used to get standing ovations every night, and it would make me high for a week or two. It was that impactful to me.
Talk to me about when we were preparing for this. we were talking about applause. We were talking about standing ovations. What do they mean to the performer?
You know, it is very hard to put together a good act, an act that's memorable, and an act that has meaning, and um, an act that leaves the audience transformed. I've been doing this since I was 5, so almost 60 years. And I've seen magicians from all over the world, and I certainly don't mean to put myself on a pedestal, but I've learned a lot. I'm not as learned as many others, but I've seen a lot of bad acts, and it to be well received, to be well remembered, um, and to leave your audience transformed in a positive way is the highest honor for any performer.
Very well said. So you've been doing this for a long time. You pursued a career, and you still were able to perform magic. Can you tell us how you were able to do that?
It wasn't easy. I've always been a technologist and businessman, career person first, because that provides for the family and the ability to, you know, support the passion. But when I was about 50 years old, I was, I think I'd hit a pretty much of a low spot in my life, spiritually. And my pastor friend said to me, "What makes you happy?" And I said, "To make people laugh and forget their problems." And he goes, "Well, how do you do that?" And I told him about my passion for magic and performing, but that I hadn't performed in about 30 years. And so he said, "Well, we need to change that." And he says, "You need to start performing again." And uh, and so he introduced me to the Spotlight Theater in Tulsa, who was auditioning for new acts for their variety show, and they accepted me. And I don't know why they did, because it was a terrible audition. I was trying to do a father and son act, and my son got absolutely scared to death when he stepped out on stage and just stood there staring at the audience. But you know, we made some changes, and he became more of my AV guy and shot the videos and made sure my sound was good and my lighting was good. And then I just started asking to perform as often as I could, because that's how you get really good. And they were kind enough to give me full 30-minute spots. So I had my own little one-man show once or twice a month for 10 years. And it was about a 100-seat theater, and just gave me a chance to craft my craft. And when my last show came in December of 2017, before I moved down to Dallas, it was another standing O, and it was great.
Wonderful. We have just a few minutes left in this segment, and we talked. What we're meeting by the magic of Zoom. Is there potential to get to experience some of your special magic, Steve?
Well, my neuropathy from my cancer treatment has really ruined my hands. I just have these kind of fish hands that aren't nearly as skilled as they used to be. But uh, I can try to do a little bit of mind reading. I don't know how this is going to go. Let's just call it an experiment, okay?
Huh.
Um,
Okay.
so I've got some cards here. I'm going to tell you I have 4 cards. I'm trying to get into frame. There you go.
Okay.
Um, I'm going to tell you that these cards are queens, and that's as much as I'm going to tell you. Okay. So
Okay.
now let's see if I predicted which queen you're going to select right now. Okay. So I need you to think very carefully. I'm going to ask you to think color: red or black?
Red.
Red. Okay. So is there any particular reason you chose red?
It popped into my mind first.
Okay. And so we have in cards, we have hearts and we have diamonds. What do you like?
Hearts.
Okay. So I'm going to spread these cards very carefully. So I want to get them in frame. Here we go. Can you see that one? Yeah, let's go full window here if we can. Can you see? That's what you
Yes.
named. That's the one I had face up. But now I'm going to show you something that's a little unusual, just to prove to you that I was reading your mind. This is also the only red one.
Wow.
By the way, there are no other queens.
Ah, This is where I'm supposed to say something. I'm sorry. That is fantastic. Wow. And like the cards, my mind is a blank slate. That is incredible. Steve, you mentioned and we'll talk a little bit more about it, but you mentioned a cancer diagnosis. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So last October, around my 65th birthday, I started running out of steam, and I didn't know why. When I went to the doctor, they thought that perhaps I was bleeding internally from like a bleeding ulcer in my stomach. So unfortunately, they couldn't get me under the sedation because everything was so low in my counts, I wouldn't wake up. So I went through 7 weeks of iron infusions. They got my counts up. And then right before Christmas, around the 19th, 20th, I went in for the endoscopy. And it was there that my GI identified stage 3 adenocarcinoma, a large bleeding mass in my stomach. And he was afraid that it had already spread and that it was likely inoperable and untreatable. And that proved to be the truth after we got a second opinion down at in Houston at MD Anderson. And so I had to make a lot of decisions really fast because that's the way you move in the cancer world. And I started treatment for both the chemo and immunotherapy in February, had 2 treatments of each. And then I landed in the hospital in March with an infection because my counts had gotten so low. And even the smallest type of bacteria would make me incredibly ill and dangerously ill. During that time, they did another scan and found that I had not even responded to the initial treatments of chemo or immunotherapy, and that my cancer had already spread to other organs and bones. And so I made a decision at that point, after speaking with the doctor of palliative care at the Baylor Scott, to work with the Faith Presbyterian Hospice. And you guys have been seeing me through my journey since then.
Since what was that date?
That was back in the middle of March.
The middle of March. And we'll be talking shortly a little bit more about that journey. But in the interim, since March, you've continued to work. And I understand.
I worked all the way through June, July. I had really good months, and I even had a chance to go away with my wife on a final holiday to South Padre Island down in Texas for a week and a half. And she made me walk 2 miles every day, and she wasn't taking no for an answer. But in July, after the holiday, I started developing the worst neuropathy. I'd never had. If they had told me it was going to be like this, I would probably never have gone for treatment, because I'm not interested in quantity of time. I'm interested in quality. And so it is what it is. And I'm on, a pretty good set of pain meds right now. And for the most part, it's keeping it manageable. But, my oxygen intake is definitely dropping, as you can tell. And my energy is dropping. And, I know my time's near. And I'm really okay with that and looking forward to the next part of my transition, because I know where I'm going.
Well, Steve, thank you for this segment. Thank you for bringing a smile to our faces. And I need to figure out how you did that trick. That was pretty amazing. We're going to gather back here shortly for another round of At the Forefront. In the meantime, thank you everyone for listening, and look forward to seeing you again at the Forefront. Thank you.